report, the first thing we call out is that Gen AI is changing the tempo, right? We live in an era where adversaries as well as defenders can understand vulnerabilities in key aspects of software that underpins enterprise functionality, from the edge to identity to the core applications that carry the most trusted data and information in an enterprise. Adversaries are able to, as we've seen in the news in recent weeks, they're able to leverage complex models to find 0 days at a breakneck speed, and that's not stopping anytime soon, as well as security researchers and defenders are finding, and software companies hopefully are finding and patching vulnerabilities at incredible speed. But this means we're going to live in an era where at machine speed, threat actors are going to be able to find vulnerabilities, create exploits before a patch is potentially fully released, and that we're going to be in an era of lots of flux and lots of change, and we're already seeing the beginning of that. That's not the only place that Gen AI is changing the tempo for adversaries. We are seeing adversaries be able to pivot and leverage deep insights into data they're collecting from networks and open source insights and insights they're collecting from scanning and other intercepted data at incredible speed to then leverage and chain together additional capabilities to accomplish their end goals. They're able to cover their tracks and vary their tooling and their malware at an unprecedented rate. And so this kind of creates a need to understand if the malware is less signaturable, capability is unknown, right? If there's a 0 day or a 1 day, if the adversary knows more about your network than you do and is able to process it, this creates a need to understand where they're coming from and get farther into the breach, right? So where the main premise of this approach, or this report, is that the actor and the attack doesn't start at the breach. It doesn't start when the SOC alert lights up. It's actually started long before that. The key networks that the adversary has to use to traverse the internet. When we think about how an adversary gets from point A to point B, they actually have some pretty intense requirements. Whether it's an espionage or a financially motivated actor, or an actor out for their own reputation, there's a couple things that they need. They need a network that can obfuscate and dodge defenders trying to find them, whether it's finding their capability or shutting them down on mainstream internet services. It's very key that there's their ability to be resilient, covert, and to hide their identities. And so you're not, if you're an attacker, you're not able to go buy or lease a server from a highly reputable organization that takes your, national ID and make sure you're a real person, has some good, strong know your customer guidelines. You're hiding in the shadows of the internet, but you're also requiring, because the IP addresses and the networks and the infrastructure that you're using can quickly be labeled as malicious. If you set off too many alerts, you need lots of fresh infrastructure. You need that at scale, and you need to be able to rely on it. So you need to be able to procure kind of in the dark web. You need to be in kind of the crevices of the internet. You need to be able to operate at scale, right? These attackers need to be, especially in an era of Gen AI, reconning and gaining initial access and executing deep into networks at tremendous scale. So you need to be able to purchase with an alternative identity. You need scale, and you need to be covert, and that means that there's been a professionalization, or that means that you can get an indication in how the adversary moves from maybe a basement in Belarus to they're in Target in Sydney, they're going to have to jump across the internet, probably through a couple hops, and they're going to leave a unique signal to do that. The network is detection, how they're setting up the infrastructure to get across the internet before they even breach their customers or sufficiently recon them or get initial access or potentially get command and control. That means that network is key to detection. And these proxy networks like IPIDEA, we're seeing a massive full-fledged economy of disguise emerge. So you went from networks of single malware-based networks of thousands of devices to now millions of devices as part of these malware-backed proxies. Interestingly, fueled in part by kind of illegitimate AI scrapers, really economically fueling these organizations. But this is a great place for criminals to hide. And we'll talk about the results of one of those in a little bit. But this basically means that IP reputation and kind of the old school way of thinking about it is gone. If threat actors can buy anonymous IPs from other threat actors at million scale for cents per IP, for fractions of a dollar, or pick your currency of choice, but for very, very low amounts of money, then and maybe you're trying to do credential stuffing, you can for a very low price, we'll talk dollars in this case, you can buy thousands of IPs and maybe only cycle 100 identities through each one. We're maintaining a positive reputation the whole time. It's not going to hit any IOC alarm bells in your SOC of hey, this tool or this source has labeled this as a malicious IP. No, it's an IP from a jurisdiction near you. It's only been used a couple of times, and the threat actor is on to the next one. So we're really facing a full-fledged economy of disguise here, where it's trivial to get good reputation infrastructure. Nation state and criminals are blurred together in shared infrastructure. So we're watching nation states use criminal tools, because why show your cards if you can just use an everyday tool? And we're also watching groups use each other's tools. And so we're also seeing nation state groups leverage proxy networks. And then there's always a bit of buying and selling on the other end between groups. And this really brings us to kind of one of our main premises, is that the global backbone is a tremendous detection layer. If you can see the complex networks that threat actors are using to move with speed and sophistication, and scale, and in a covert way to leverage, accelerated Gen AI tools, you have an early warning system. You can see where the threat actors are coming. You can see what their tools are, and you can discover their techniques before they get too far. And so we really see, this year, the network as detection, not necessarily an IP here or an IP address here or domain here, but really those networks as detection, and the global IP backbone as an early warning system as key to the fight. And in 2025, we saw the opportunity, and this is highlighted in the report, we saw the opportunity, the actor identify the opportunity at the edge. Not necessarily new in 2025, but it's been a building theme through the past few years, and it's only accelerating. And what we mean here is the edge of a network has devices that are high uptime, high bandwidth, and typically low monitoring from an endpoint detection perspective. How many firewalls have endpoint detection rules running on them? Yet we see lots and lots of adversaries actually targeting firewalls for initial access, right? It's difficult for an organization to roll out a patch quickly in a networking appliance, essentially a firewall that is so central to the operations of an organization, and the threat actors know it. And so getting initial access, privilege escalation, and then a key foothold in a network is really what we're seeing at the edge, and with the ability to move beyond the favorite ecosystems that threat actors tend to select, right? The tools that tend to have the most vulnerabilities. We're gonna watch a proliferation of opportunity at the edge for the threat actors. Every main firewall ecosystem in 2025 had some kind of critical vulnerability for the most part. Or we watched many major firewall systems undergo this, and that's not to throw stones at anyone in particular. It's to highlight that it's not if, it's when, and threat actors will continue to pursue now with increasingly capable tools that opportunity. And we'll see that the real signal lies in the network, right? It doesn't necessarily lie in a, ooh, this is a bad IP, look that up to see if you're attacked. It's, no, look at this network, because we believe that threat actors are anonymizing and scaling their access to their victims' network, to their victims' environments through these networks. And so we're really going to see that the signal and how adversaries are spinning up their attacks and what they're attacking and what techniques they're using will lie in the network itself. And then the best disguise will be legitimate infrastructure. Again, not necessarily a new trend, but it will become commonplace, I think, for defenders, if it already hasn't kind of rose to the attention that it is likely that the next critical attack on a network will come from a residential IP. You know, typically something not thought of is adversary infrastructure. The nice router, nice router in the town over makes a great disguise, because, you know, when a defender is looking up the IP, they're thinking, oh, you know, this doesn't look like a malicious geo or a leased server service that's in Russia. It'll look like potentially a home internet connection, like a remote worker, perhaps. And so it's important that we uncover that disguise, kind of going back up to that. When Black Lotus Labs is detecting how the botnets that conduct DDoS attacks work, we're looking not necessarily for the bots that are launching these massive attacks, but we're looking for who's controlling them, and oftentimes looking to take them down, right? Enumerate the bots for our DDoS scrubbing capabilities. But we're looking to keep the internet clean here, and collaborate across industry to make sure that the botnets are well understood and mitigatable. And so from a DDoS attack perspective, we're regularly null routing, preventing those C2s from traversing the internet or talking across the internet. So when you hear us talk about C2 takedowns, that's kind of what we're talking about here. But all of a sudden something shifted, and one of the members on our team, Chris, comes over to me and he's saying, Michelle, like, normally we have DDoS botnets that on the side sell their access as proxies, right? They make a little bit of money on the side and they're not DDoSing. They sell their point of presence to other criminals that want to cover their tracks. And so we were seeing that with AI Suru, but then we were seeing something different here, where the architecture behind AI Suru shifted. They were buying proxy access. And then what we later learned, it looked like Kimwolf was basically merging with a major residential proxy, malware-based residential proxy network that we were tracking called IP-IDEA, and they were converging, and the back end was shifting over. And this was, AI Suru had done some of this, but not at the scale here. And then we watched an explosion of bots. And it was a mystery to us why these IP addresses that were previously associated with the residential proxies were all of a sudden proliferating the DDoS bot at such scale. And what we later learned was that the Kimmel threat actors were buying access at million scale to these residential proxy networks, pretty cheap to do. And then they were exploiting a flaw in these criminal-run proxy networks. And then they were basically accessing anything else on the Wi-Fi network. And that is what allowed Kimmel to accelerate from 1 terabit per second, which was the record a year before, to, it says 11 here. That was the initial ones that we were seeing, but we've seen them tick up to 30 terabits per second. And for those of us in the networking and circuit world, 30 terabits per second starts to sound like very sophisticated enterprise-grade bandwidth. And we saw, again, a 300% increase in bots in a given botnet in 7 days, and it was already large. Like, it's one thing to watch a new up-and-comer get going. Okay, they're growing, that's great for them, getting their feet under them. But this is watching a very large network triple in 7 days. And so what do? Well, we enumerated the backend, and we started null routing and preventing the backend from traversing the internet. So basically the bot controllers, keeping them from launching or communicating with their bots over the internet. We were doing this at 100 scale automatically across the backend, but actors would recover from a null route in 12 hours. So they were super resilient because they had this ever-present well of resources at their disposal. And so we ended up, there was actually a law enforcement takedown, an international law enforcement takedown that occurred in March of this year, where U.S. law enforcement arrested several members of the key botnets, including Kimmel. And that has stifled some of this activity. But the root cause and what's caused a transformation in DDoS, very large botnets, still persists. There has been some closing of the initial LAN pivoting vulnerabilities that allowed Kimmel to do what it does, but residential proxies still exist, and they're still vulnerable. And so this won't be the end of highly potent, massive bandwidth DDoS attacks. We're really in a new era of DDoS attacks. Sure that we're emphasizing with defenders that we got to protect the edge like it's the vault door. And I'm seeing a question come in on the Q&A. That becomes difficult in a post-Mythos world where adversaries and defenders have really unique insight into vulnerabilities at a faster pace. We will almost certainly have vulnerabilities at the edge. We gotta keep after that visibility. Shift from indicators, right? An IP address here, a domain here, that's malicious. It's good. I looked at the IP address that my colleague passed me over. It's okay. We're not infected. We're good. Is not enough, right? We're seeing adversaries able to cycle through across millions of IPs for cents on the dollar at a time. We're going to have to look at networks as detection, not IPs as detection here. Treat proxy networks as active threat infrastructure, again, doubling down on the innovations there and malware-based proxies at massive scale. If you have an infection that looks like a criminal infection, but you have a suspicion that it might be espionage, definitely take that thought into account as we see shared infrastructure and tooling there. And use scale against the attacker. If an adversary is able to change what their tooling looks like so that it can evade detection, if they're able to repurpose 0 days and POCs quickly, even if they're criminals, even if they're not even that good, but if they're able to use scale at their disposal, use the networks and the trust infrastructure that they have to have in order to conduct their attacks against the attacker. And so really look at that network as detection. Quickest wins based on the report, it's to understand your edge ecosystem and understand what your compensating controls are, whether it's from a network visibility perspective, being able to prioritize maybe what is vulnerable for a time, right? If we're talking about POC and exploit releases before patches are released or before patches can be tested and deployed. We gotta know the edge. Is that a quick win? Absolutely not. That's eating your Wheaties, as we say in the United States. You gotta, it's the lean protein and then the good macros and the vitamins. Unfortunately, it's the basics, but it's really paying a keen attention to your front door. And we were talking earlier today amongst colleagues, and if your front door is wide open, sometimes it's going to have to be in this new world. Make sure your security cameras are locked in high def, so that your compensating controls are there. And I would say the network as detection is a key compensating control there.